The International Telecommunication Union is a leading global force in both the emerging digital economy and the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. So it's only natural that the ITU would deepen its relationship with a country that's also at the forefront of these movements, China. And standing at the nexus of this relationship is the ITU Secretary General Zhao Houlin, who is himself a native of China. Back in 2017, the ITU and the Chinese Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, or MIIT, signed a memorandum of understanding to cooperate more closely. Today, on the eve of the second Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation, what has this cooperation yielded so far? Where will this relationship go from here? And what role does the ITU believe the Belt and Road Initiative can play in advancing the development of global telecommunications? Joining me in the studio is Zhao Houlin, who in January began his second four-year term as the ITU Secretary General. So, Mr. Zhao, thank you so much for joining us here again, and congratulations for your second term. As I mentioned, you signed this memorandum of understanding with the MIIT, and now we are about 2 years into this program. Exactly what has been done? What is the progress?
Yeah, it's my pleasure to sign agreement with Minister Miao at the first summit held in Beijing, 14th of May 2017. As you know, that this is basically for infrastructure, for cooperations between China and the foreign partners to really promote the infrastructure development from our point of view. And ITU was largely considered by many of our members and partners as a technical agency. But since last decade, we know that a lot of ICT development everywhere. There still also problem of digital divide. So there are a lot of requests to ITU to help on the infrastructure development. And we know that the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is great opportunity. Therefore, ITU worked very hard with the MIIT of China to see if we can develop some cooperation. So I was very pleased to sign that agreement 2 years ago. And over the last 2 years, we had a lot of progress, because for ITU, this is a new challenge, and we never got such kind of things in the past.
You mean the cooperation? Cooperation
on the infrastructure development with any member states.
Okay.
And we are very pleased that over the last 2 years, China and ITU had a lot of projects in many places, particularly in Asia-Pacific area. But also, we worked very hard to promote ICT development in Africa. And then I would like to share with you that last September, we had our China-Africa Summit in Beijing. And for the first time, in the main conferences, the host deliver messages in the keynote messages, include ICT as one of the major areas to be focused between China and the Africa partners. And this is great. That is because Africa leaders request to have ICT be prioritized. And they also supported China and the ITU to try to make partnership with Africa. If you look at the Beijing action plan, you will find that in that action plan, also there are 4 provisions to talk about China-Africa cooperation on ICT, and in particular, they mentioned that they'd like to strengthen their cooperation in ITU. So that was the first time we saw such kind of statement. So we are very happy.
Any concrete progress so far? Any outcome since the last 2 years that you have decided to collaborate? What changes have been felt by the local people?
For example, in Asia-Pacific area, we worked with China to see how can we use ICT to facilitate agriculture development. So that is one project. We already have some kind of actions. And in particular in Africa, we had China-East Africa cooperation to facilitate those ICT development in the region, sub-region, where you see need challenges to have interconnectivity among the members of the sub-regions. And in the past, never we had such kind of focus, priority. Now with the China's partnership, with ITU's coordination rules, so we had this kind of project.
Yeah.
And we present those projects to Chinese authority, to Chinese Agency of Development, and to look for opportunities. And I'm very pleased this kind of project will be put into place very soon.
What's going to happen during this year's forum? What other, how are you going to plan, how are you going to continue to deepen those cooperations so that more concrete results will be delivered?
Yeah. Encouraged by the output we already get, encouraged by higher interest from our Africa friends, from our Asia Pacific friends, we found that the Belt and Road framework will give us a lot of opportunities, so that we will try to look for more opportunity to work with them. For example, we also try to extend cooperation with some other agencies like Export-Import Bank.
But there are a lot of voices of concern, a lot of voices of potential criticism or even outright criticism about this initiative not being transparent, not being open, not being multilateral. So in your cooperation, what are you doing to make sure that the operation is transparent, that companies from different parts of the world and not just Chinese companies are able to share in the benefits? Yeah,
you raised a very important and a very interesting point. Indeed, I noted this kind of comments from the media. But from my side, as Secretary General of the International Telecommunication Union, I encourage all investment into ICTs by anybody. So not only I try to encourage China as a good partners with Africa, for example, we also encourage Japan. For example, this year, Japan and Africa will have a Japan-Africa Summit. I also encourage them to put ICT higher on their priorities. And I also checked with some other partners. For example, later this year, Russia will have also summit between Russia and Africa. I also encourage them. So in general, I will encourage investment into ICT and to help our Africa friends, to help developing countries to get their ICT infrastructure improved.
Well, I'm going to ask you this question. You're from China, okay? You're heading this very important organization, but you're saying you're trying to encourage everybody to have ITC cooperation with the underdeveloped countries. How are you going to make sure that you're neutral, that you're impartial in advancing the collective interests of individual members?
It's very easy.
Instead of just benefiting China or Chinese companies, because you might have that kind of advantage or disadvantage or scrutiny on you.
For me, the ICT achieved a lot over the last decade, but still today, half population not connected online yet. To encourage investment in this area, we need a huge amount of money, investment. And we need a lot of people to come together. For example, again, Africa. Africa is left behind many other continents. And Africa also very dynamic, try to get improvement by ICT to transform Africa. Then the potential is huge. China may not be the only source of partnership, and China could not be the only source. So that I have to encourage everybody to go there. So for anyone who would like to support us to facilitate ICT development, I will encourage them. And China in this connections, since I'm Chinese, so I try to do more to encourage China to go to Africa, to go to developing countries. And I'm very pleased to know that, as I mentioned earlier, that China-Africa Summit, for the first time, they put ICT highly on the agenda.
How do you look at, however, the sensitivity of the issues that we're talking at this moment? You must have seen it, right, involving the Chinese company Huawei and all the suspicion, especially when it comes to infrastructure for telecoms. They're saying Huawei could, be installed backdoor at the request of the Chinese company to collect information. And you, being in your position, how do you see such suspicion, such risks, and how is that affecting the development of telecommunications around the world?
As far as I am concerned, when I have my friends from developing countries. So they look for opportunities to work with China. That they even ask me, as a Chinese, you may help us to get this easier. And I think that this is my duty, not only because I'm Chinese, because China has a lot of potentials to help assist developing countries. And China has ability to do that. And then China also has very good reputations to cooperate with our developing country members. So therefore, I don't see any problem. Up to now, I never heard anybody come to my office complain that we get this kind of date from China. I never heard any single complaint. Instead, I can just tell you, last week I received a minister from Africa. They come back to me for their original request to see, if we can have some partnership with China. So that I said, okay, I will go to Beijing for Belt and Road Summit. I will try to also use the opportunity to encourage China to do their best to help.
Okay. Well, finally, where are we in terms of 5G development? Are we really at the threshold of the 5G era?
Yes. And this year, I still remember that when you were in Geneva, 2012, and you reported our conference, World Radio Communication Conference, 2012. Then it was a 4G. You remember?
Yes.
That is, the 4G standard was fixed. 4G spectrum was fixed. Now this year, 2019, we will have another radio communication conference be held in Sharm el-Sheikh of Egypt later this year. We will talk about 5G. Now from 2012 to 2019, only 7 years. So technology moved very fast. I'm very pleased to see that many countries already started their 5G pilot. China. And it's also very famous that in many cities already started the trial. And in Africa also, I already noted that, for example, Lesotho, I was there September last year, they already started 5G. And recently I visited some countries, they all told me that we have started this 5G. 5G will be there for sure.
Okay, so with a stepped up cooperation, more countries should be able to board the train of 5G and move forward.
There is no exception. I think that in the future, it's a 5G who will really give us opportunities to include all technologies and
we have to leave it there.
change our life.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Zhao Houlin, Secretary General of the International Telecommunication Union. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. Thanks for watching. You've got the point.